All right, folks, I'm Bret Kinsella. This is GAIN, Generative AI News Rundown. This is a special edition. We're usually here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Today, because of the Microsoft Build Conference, Eric and I thought, hey, let's just do a mini GAIN. Let's just come out. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube, so hopefully some people will find us there, but we just announced it, so who knows who's going to show up. But this will show up in the YouTube channel, Voicebot YouTube channel, so you can watch the whole thing if you just joined halfway through or you're seeing this later. All right. So what is the topic here? What are we focused on? And that's Microsoft, one of the giants now in the generative AI space. And we just want to go through 5 key AI announcements. So we're just going to bang this out really quick. Hopefully this is helpful to people who didn't get a chance to watch. I was talking to a lot of people online who didn't get a chance to watch today and haven't seen it yet. So hopefully this will be a quick rundown. Plus, I think we've already got 3 articles in Voicebot about this, many more to come. There were a lot of things that were very significant from today. And this is the Microsoft Build Conference, in case you guys don't know what that is. That's like Apple's WWDC. This is for the Microsoft developers. Azure has a separate one. This is really for core Microsoft. And here are the things that we're going to focus on today. Maybe we'll talk about a couple other things. Probably when we're talking about these, other things will come up. But ChatGPT was part of the discussion for sure. OpenAI is a big part of the story, almost all of the story, has an OpenAI relationship. Plugins, we've heard about this from an OpenAI standpoint. We're hearing about this now from a Microsoft standpoint. Windows Copilot, for all you Windows users out there, and I think there's a lot of you from what last time I checked, you're going to have a Copilot that's going to be able to help you just work on your desktop, which is pretty amazing. Copilot's everywhere. This is about enterprises. Microsoft would, and what I think is probably the biggest announcement today, is really focused on enabling other organizations, other companies, usually big companies, enterprises, to create their own Copilot for anything. And we'll talk a little bit about GitHub, Copilot chat, maybe something else will come up. But that sounds like a good agenda for you, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes hard to pick out the top stuff, but this is definitely the biggest news I would say this for today.
Okay, so let me see if I can find our first story here. There we go. And I'll share that tab. Should come up. Okay, top story of the day. ChatGPT will use Bing to answer questions. So we just saw ChatGPT with the plugins, the new browsing plugin. You can get real-time access to the internet. You could also just go use the Edge browser, Bing Chat. You could also use GPT-4 in your conversational search. But hey, seems like perfect timing. Bring Bing as a model selection option right into ChatGPT. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, and it sort of brings back how Bing AI launched using ChatGPT as its model for search anyway, and now it's just in a way going back to that, so that if you're a ChatGPT Plus subscriber, not only will you start getting answers pulled from the web, but specifically you'll get citations from Bing. So if you ask a question about something going on, it's going to say, "Hey, here's the answer," and Bing has a link to where that information is coming from. It's interesting that they're talking about it as a default option, suggesting that it won't be the only choice. But for now, at least, that's going to be where ChatGPT users are getting their answers, which makes sense because, of course, Microsoft and OpenAI are now very, very deeply linked. So it's
yes. And I think there's a couple things about this image too, if people can see this. So first of all, if you are not a ChatGPT Plus subscriber, you might not see that you can select different models at the top. Everyone who's on free is on GPT 3.5. This is GPT-4 at the top. If you're in GPT-4, you have options. So the drop down here, default, that's going to be ChatGPT with GPT-4 the way you use it today. And that will be the thing that is just normally comes up. But if you want real-time information, browse the internet, you select this other model. The browsing model will be Bing. So they had a browsing model. There's one around there right now. Maybe it is Bing. I think it's something else, but it'll be good that it'll be Bing going forward. And it's going to give you source links and citations right in the response. The thing there's also the plugin model you can see is one of their options, and this code execution model, which I haven't seen yet. So whoever took this screenshot has more options than I do. But I think this is a significant announcement. Maybe not earth-shattering, but obviously they're trying to add more value to ChatGPT. I just did a video on Perplexity AI and why that's my favorite alternative to ChatGPT. A lot of it's because it has some of these search functionality that you don't really have in ChatGPT, and maybe this will mitigate that because if you can do everything in one place, maybe you will.
Yeah, it'll encourage people to maybe pay for ChatGPT Plus if they haven't before, certainly.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe. Absolutely. Well, the more important thing is it'll get people using Bing.
Yep.
I don't know if there's probably more users of Bing than there are ChatGPT, but I would say that the users of ChatGPT, many of them are not normal Bing users. And if they start using Bing inside of ChatGPT, that's still Bing search traffic that's not going to Google. That still hits Satya Nadella's strategy.
Yeah, it could potentially be the feeder service for Bing.
Okay, great. All right. So, by the way, if anybody's joined us live on sort of our impromptu GAIN event, just let us know. Just post a comment or something like that. We'll try to respond to you if we can in real time. Add your comments to the show. Okay. So the next topic that we want to get to, let's see if we can share a different tab here. Plugins. Okay, so plugins. We've had some videos on plugins recently showing people how those operate when that was still in alpha, and then obviously a lot of people who have ChatGPT Plus now can see plugins. So this is something that is in ChatGPT. There's a couple of significant announcements here. So first of all, Microsoft's offering this for the models that they offer, like GPT, regular OpenAI GPT models that anybody can build their own solutions on top of. So they're going to have plugins. Now, the plugins that are available initially are all of the Microsoft services, but they also have a way for you to do third-party services. And the next thing that comes up is we see that there are a lot of plugins already, and I might even have this. I think I do have this. Yeah, I'm going to share another screen here. Which might freeze for just a second. All right. So they also said that any plugins that are enabled in OpenAI for ChatGPT are going to be available through the Azure services when you're building your own model. So it's the type of thing where if you build once, you get distribution in both places. And we can talk a little bit more about the architecture, but what did you think, Eric?
Yeah, plugins are very obviously the strategic next move that OpenAI is taking, that Microsoft's taking. They want the way that generative AI is used to include as many of their third-party partners as possible. They want these other companies to think of OpenAI, to think of Microsoft when they're considering investing in this kind of technology. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And again, going back to having Bing as the search engine for ChatGPT, of course, you're going to want all of the plugins that are already being tested on ChatGPT to be available elsewhere for Microsoft. It blurs the lines between the service you're using, the company you're working with, and the technology that's being leveraged to connect the two. I think that is a deliberate choice and not a bad one. It means that as long as you're within that sort of ecosystem, you're getting the services and the experience that you want.
And the pull-through is really impressive here, the pull-through opportunity. There are a lot of companies that want to sign up today to be a plugin for ChatGPT, who probably would take a long time to get around to doing something for Microsoft's implementation of OpenAI GPT models, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact is that they are on the wait list, and there are thousands of them to do these, and there's hundreds of them who have plugins now. This is all going to be available. So this makes the Azure OpenAI services more valuable because you go there and you have all these things together. They did actually pull up that Bill Gates quote. Not surprising, it's Microsoft, but the definition of a platform, and to summarize what he says about a platform, it's only a platform if the people who are using the platform or the partners who are supporting the platform are making more money than the company that deployed it. Otherwise, it's just a product. And so this is one of the ways that Microsoft thinks they're going to create this ecosystem where everybody's benefiting, and Microsoft and Azure are just coordinating functions.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of, you would pay Google to properly index your company. You'll pay Microsoft to properly implement your technology or your service within this garden of ChatGPT or Bing. It absolutely makes sense to me. And the way that Microsoft's going about it, where they have ChatGPT plugins, but there's also these Microsoft 365 plugins, and they're making distinctions between what they're providing and what the partners are providing, and then with some sort of the enterprise focused elements. There's all these potential revenue streams and potential partnerships that they're getting, which again helps them claw more and more of what was traditionally the Google search traffic. And I think that's where a lot of the power is. That's such a good
point. That's such a good point. And I hadn't even thought about it until you just said it. This stuff is all brand new. Okay, so one of the things they did is they've exposed several prominent Azure, Microsoft cognitive services or web services as a plugin. So if you're using OpenAI, and the easiest place to use OpenAI might be Azure at this point, if you want something elastic and scalable, right? Cloud hosting environment. And you need a translation service, right? You need something to convert from English to German, let's say. Well, you might normally just say, okay, well, I usually use a Google service for this and translate. Oh, wait a second, I'm right here. I can just like click this button on, and all of a sudden it automatically translates to German. Or, oh, I want to add search to my new Copilot app, which we're going to talk about in a second. Oh, well, like maybe I would use some third party. Maybe I'd use Google, but I might, there's a lot of options out there that I could use for this. Oh, I could just turn on Bing. Okay, well, I'm just going to use that. And so there's this, that's the other pull through from people want access to GPT models. And now they're going to have easier access to all these Microsoft tools that they might not normally go to first.
Yep. And every time that they have an issue, suddenly there's a Microsoft AI powered customer service agent there to help them answer the questions and get them back on the right track without ever again leaving that same area. Absolutely.
And the other thing too is, some of the people who are going to watch this will have seen some of the videos I've done or what I've written about the plugin model. And actually I have a great interview with Adam Chire, co-founder of Siri, co-founder of Viv Labs, did Siri and Bixby for Samsung. And this week, and he's like, hey, the model they're implementing is a broken model. The way they're doing plugins isn't going to work. And I was like, at first I wasn't sure. I was like, wait a second, Adam, I think this could work. But then I tried it and I'm like, oh, he knew exactly what the problems were going to be because he saw what they were trying to accomplish. And he's done this before. Well, I just thought about this and say, okay, maybe it's not a great model. Maybe they'll fix it over time. I think they will. From an enterprise standpoint, the discontinuity of the user experience might not be so bad because part of it is the cognitive load. I have to know as a user when I select which model, when I select which plugin. I have to do all this switching, and I might not be really task focused on one thing at a time and then the next thing. In an enterprise setting, I am an expert, right? I'm a professional in what I'm doing, so I might be task specific. I change the model, and then I don't have to go back and forth between models all the time. Plus, I probably have a high level of awareness of what the different models or plugins can do. And so then I just know I don't have to do this discovery program. So I think this model actually could work well in enterprise, whereas it leaves a bit to be desired today from a consumer user experience standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's true. And as David Conquest just posted, yeah, it's still V1. There's definitely a lot of bugs strategically and technically to work out. But that doesn't mean they won't be worked out. I mean, it's, again, going back to the search engine area, once upon a time, using Ask Jeeves wasn't exactly going to be great for a deep dive into every blog everyone had ever written. But now, of course, it's like entire social media platforms can be parsed in a few seconds. So I think there's a long way to go, but that doesn't mean that it won't get there pretty quickly, at least most of the way.
Okay, we're going to move on to our third story. But before we do that, for anybody who's watching, this is the Generative AI News Rundown. We run this live every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time, and we talk about the top generative AI stories of the week. But this is not Thursday. This is actually a Tuesday afternoon. We're here as a special edition because we want to talk about some of these key announcements from Microsoft Build. We didn't want to wait 2 days. On Thursday, we'll talk about some other things about Microsoft Build. Maybe we'll hit on some of these because more information is going to be revealed. But we're going to talk about that. Plus, we've got a bunch of other things in the generative AI space that are not Microsoft related that are going to be covered there. Still, it'll be a lot of Microsoft on Thursday. But join us at noon on Thursday. The other thing is if you want to read about these things, I just showed a couple of things. I'm going to show one right now. Voicebot has the most comprehensive coverage of the generative AI space, not just Microsoft, but in OpenAI, but what's going on at Google, what's going on at Anthropic, what's going on at AI 21 Labs. So check out voicebot.ai. Up at the top, you can actually see on here we have topics, and you can see synthetic media, generative AI. You can actually just sort by those if that's the only thing you're interested in, or you can just look at our homepage. We've got a lot of really good stuff there. So definitely do that. Okay, next story. Microsoft wants companies to build their own generative AI chatbot copilots. Eric, you wrote this story a couple hours ago. Tell me about it.
Yes. So this is the idea. This expands from not just consumer-facing services, but into the enterprise space, which understandably is where a lot of money is to be made, and a lot of bigger technology shifts happen usually before they enter the consumer area. And so the idea for this is to leverage these models, these powerful generative AI models, with the proprietary data that a company has. So a company might want to, they might have a lot of employees, they might have a lot of employee services like healthcare plans, retirement plans, things like that. And this way they can have all that information available, funnel it through a generative AI chatbot similar to ChatGPT, and an employee could talk and have a conversation and get the same sort of powerful search and answer system in place with this company data that the company doesn't want to have public facing or put it on their public website. It sort of keeps everything safer and more secure than it would be otherwise, but also gives these companies a chance to customize internal services in a way that is more associated with consumer apps like ChatGPT.
Absolutely. So this is great. Copilots, I like the idea of what they've done. They turned everything into a copilot. They said, listen, we don't need something that we can just like send command line to. We're going to request, it's going to respond. We want something that's sitting alongside us that can be our helper. And our helper, it's not just buttons that we already know how to press to get certain actions, but when we don't know, when we want to ask something that's more complex, like what is the main point of this legal document, right? They even showed like, I guess we skipped one of the stories, I think. Microsoft and Windows. We'll talk about it now. We do the Copilot in Windows. They were using it in Word, and they were working on a contract, and they wanted to get some clarification on one of the clauses. There was an integration with Westlaw, which is an information service around law, and it answered the question. Just like you might have a first-year associate or a lawyer sitting next to you answering your question. And we think about companies like Rally Legal that we've had on who do this, who like specialize in that space. That's a really interesting idea. And then from an enterprise standpoint, just think of all the times when enterprise users could really benefit from being able to look at a spreadsheet or get the source of information or just look at their product specifications and FAQs and just pull some information out quickly. Yeah,
and it's kind of amazing that this is happening. I mean, just a little farther along in the dictionary is the word Cortana, which was exactly the same, ideally designed to be very, very similar, especially for businesses and office purposes. So it's kind of funny now that it's a different technology pointing to the same purpose, presumably without a voice.
Wait, Cortana? What about Clippy?
I mean, Clippy at least was designed with a specific, a very limited productivity aim in mind. It wasn't designed to be customized for every office to have their own version of Clippy, wearing a different hat. I think this is it's something that companies want to say. It saves so much. Not like getting rid of jobs so much as replacing the very tedious process of an HR person having to explain the same thing over and over again, as opposed to working on the things that a computer can't do. So I think it's what people want. And again, with speaking of it, and same with integrating it into Windows 11, it's what Cortana was for Windows 10. It's what Microsoft used to make such a big deal about this idea of this personal assistant that was integrated throughout your every app and every program you used on your computer. And now it's a Copilot instead of Cortana, but it may as well have the last few letters rubbed out with a pencil eraser and written in Copilot instead. But I think it's a great idea. I just don't know why it's being considered. I think it's purpose-wise, it is very similar, even though, yes, the technology itself is radically different in some ways.
Yes. Long way to say your last point, which is the key one. It was the idea has been there all along. We just didn't have the tools in order to do this in any meaningful way. And I love that. And I assume that people will be saying, hey, Clippy's back, but it's just a dialogue box and these types of things. If you don't know who Clippy is, This is going back a few years, but not that far. Okay, so there are a couple other things I thought were super interesting about building your own copilots, right? So we have the models, come to Azure, build a copilot for whatever you need. Your HR system, your ERP, your production level, consumer application, whatever it is. But they also have this thing called AI Studio, and we're not gonna go through all the components of that today, but AI Studio has a lot of features. And there was one I wanted to show. Sorry, I froze up there for a second. There was one that I wanted to show here. And this is prompt flow, which I thought was really interesting. So this idea is that when you're having an interaction, and one of the examples they showed in one of the later sessions today was someone who was shopping, they had 3 things in the shopping cart, and they asked a question about another product, right? And so this idea is that, like, instead of, we could actually integrate this and say, okay, there's some context associated with that question that would be different if they didn't have 3 things in their shopping cart versus having 3 things in their shopping cart. And what it comes down to is you can basically, over on the right-hand side here, you can build these different types of flows that mean if they ask a question and there's something in the cart, take that into context when answering the question. So if it's about that item in the cart, pretty straightforward. Yes, you have 3 in your cart, and this is the answer to your question. But they also showed an example of where once it takes that into account, the large language model will use that as context, and they'll say about this other product, and it pairs well with this other thing, this other product, which happens to be in your shopping cart. And so, or about something about them, because they're logged in, and make this mass personalization. And they have this basically simple way to do some flow building. And I think that's a really powerful tool, and it's going to make Microsoft Bot Framework and these Azure services just seem so much easier to use than a lot of the other solutions.
Yeah, and ease of use, I think, is, again, the thing, the watchword for Microsoft right now, because, again, if it's easy to use, people will try it out, and if it's easy to use, people will stay there. And with all these various plugins and APIs and business purposes, there's no need for they be able to entice people to stay longer and than they probably ever would have before with the Microsoft product.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about one more thing related to this. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Just building your personalized Copilot. So they have this new thing called the Copilot stack. And just from top to bottom there, we've got the apps, which are the Copilots, the ChatGPTs, the plugins, those types of things. Those are the things that face the consumers. And then they have a deconstruction of this further, which, look at Voicebot and Synthedia, and you'll find that stuff. And then we've got the orchestration layer, which is we've been talking about that a lot on Game. Like at some point when you're using multiple models, multiple backends, multiple data sources, the orchestration, and then they have the foundation models in the infrastructure. A lot of people saw Azure putting together infrastructure to host OpenAI GPT models, and they thought that everyone would just build on top of it. But no, they're going to have an orchestration tool. They're going to have, then you can plug in all of your different services, whether those be Microsoft services or third parties. And the other thing they said about orchestration, which is the traffic cop, to make sure that whatever your need is goes to the right place to get the right answer. They're going to have their own orchestration tool, but they also are supporting third parties. And they specifically called out LangChain, and they say they want to support a lot of open source options there. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on the stack, but I just want to put that out there if people hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I think it's telling that they're revealing this kind of strategy. It's at a higher level. Obviously, it's not giving away secrets or anything, but it does suggest that this is the way they want others to also approach it, so that it would be easier to integrate any other partnerships, any other future features into their own system within this same kind of stack.
Okay, so if we go up, we're going to round the corner here, and this is going to close up. We're going to close up, but we do want to talk about one more thing before we leave, and that's the GitHub Copilot chat, which was, you may not have seen it because this was they probably got into that like an hour after the first keynote was done. Not saying that you didn't see it, because I know you did, but like a lot of the people who, just watched the first 30 minutes or just watched the first hour. So GitHub Copilot, as people know, is this really popular code generation tool. It's your pair programmer, they call it, but your assistant programmer that will, you just ask it to write a certain type of code and it'll write it for you, write the procedure out for you, so you don't have to. It'll actually go and it'll look for you, do debugging. That's what this new Copilot chat is going to do. And it's almost like, particularly developers, having a mentor or a colleague who can just help them with something really quickly, either generate code or review code or give them some information that they just need a second opinion on.
Yeah, and I think it's a term that's both very evocative and accurate to what the Microsoft wants it to be. They want it to be the one that's helping out, doing the stuff behind the scenes, but also able to provide feedback as and when you need it. And so it's not surprising that they're making it more conversational, making it more accessible, and also that they're putting it into Windows Terminal, which is very much on the more developer side of things. But it allows for that kind of natural language discussion of what a developer is building, of what they want to build, with the coding ability of GitHub Copilot, so that there's going to be more opportunity for, experimentation in that regard. And I think that, again, turning to the enterprise side of things, if Microsoft can get people to always turn to Copilot to help them code as well as everything else, then they'll be very happy with what they've created.
Absolutely. And they were out early. That's based on OpenAI Codex. We just wrote it. Both of us have written separately about Cody from Google. Amazon has Code Whisperer. Hugging Star Coder from Hugging Chat is another one that's out there. There's a lot of tools out there. GitHub Copilot was out early. They've got a lot of momentum behind it. And putting this chat bot that's a helper inside of GitHub Copilot, I think it's going to be something that helps them extend the lead, and something everyone else is going to have to mark.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, folks. There we go. There's your quick 5-point rundown of Microsoft Build. Come join us on Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time to see live the Generative AI News of the Week, some more Microsoft stuff, and a lot of other things. We do that every week on LinkedIn and YouTube. I hope you can join us there, and sign up for our daily newsletter, Generative AI Synthedia, bit.ly/Synthedia, and make a comment down below. What did you think was the biggest announcement today? What did you think of the ones we picked? Is there anything you didn't see that you would like to? If you have questions about the things we talked about, hit the comments below, and please like and subscribe. It'd be so helpful for everybody. Please do that. All right, folks, thanks a lot. This has been great. Bye-bye.
Bye.